I was wiping down tables at Murphy's Diner for what felt like the thousandth time that week when the most expensive car I'd ever seen pulled into our gravel parking lot. Working as a waitress while putting myself through community college wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Barely. What I didn't expect was for a billionaire CEO to walk into our small-town diner and sign a check with a signature I'd memorized from a faded photograph I'd been staring at since I was 7 years old. A signature that belonged to the father my mother told me had died before I was born. Before we begin, I'd love to know how old you were when you met your first love. Share your experience in the comments below, and please subscribe for more stories about unexpected revelations and the connections that bind us together. Now, let me take you back to that ordinary Tuesday that turned my whole world upside down. At 24, I thought I had my life figured out. I worked the morning shift at Murphy's Diner in Millbrook, a small town in upstate New York where nothing exciting ever happened. The pay was terrible, but the tips were decent enough to cover my tuition at the local community college where I was studying business administration. My plan was simple: finish my degree, save enough money to transfer to a 4-year university, and eventually start my own business. I lived with my mom, Linda, in the same small apartment we'd shared since I was a kid. She worked as a seamstress at the local dry cleaner and had raised me as a single mother after my father died in a car accident when she was pregnant with me. At least, that's what she'd always told me. The only thing I had of my father was a photograph I'd found hidden in one of my mom's old books when I was 7. It was a picture of 2 teenagers, clearly in love, standing by a lake. On the back, in careful handwriting, someone had written, "Linda, you are my whole world. I will love you forever, Garrett." The signature was distinctive, a bold G followed by flowing letters that spelled out the rest of his name. I'd asked my mom about the photo once, and she'd gotten so upset that I never brought it up again. But I kept the picture hidden in my jewelry box, and over the years, I'd traced that signature with my finger so many times I could have drawn it from memory. That Tuesday started like any other. I arrived at Murphy's at 6:00 a.m. to help with the breakfast rush. The diner was a local institution, red vinyl booths, checkered floors, and a menu that hadn't changed since the 1980s. Our usual customers were truckers, construction workers, and retirees who came for the coffee and stayed for the gossip. I was refilling the coffee station when my manager, Pete, approached me with an unusual request. "Kate, I need you to handle the back booth today. We've got some businessmen coming in for a private meeting around 10:00 a.m. He specifically requested the corner booth, and he's paying extra for privacy." "What kind of businessman?" I asked, curious. Millbrook wasn't exactly a hotbed of corporate activity. "Don't know, don't care." Pete shrugged. "Money's money. Just make sure he's happy and keep the coffee coming." At exactly 10:00 a.m., a black sedan with tinted windows pulled up outside. I watched through the window as a man in an expensive suit stepped out. He was tall, probably in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident bearing that screamed success. Even from a distance, I could tell his suit cost more than I made in 3 months. He walked into the diner like he owned the place, his eyes scanning the room before settling on the corner booth Pete had reserved for him. I grabbed a menu and a pot of coffee and approached his table. "Good morning," I said with my best customer service smile. "I'm Kate, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with some coffee?" "Please," he said, his voice deep and cultured. He had kind eyes, I noticed, despite the obvious wealth and power he carried. "And thank you for accommodating the private meeting request. I know this isn't exactly the Four Seasons. Murphy's has its own charm," I said, pouring his coffee. "Are you expecting someone?" "Yes, my attorney should be here shortly. We're discussing some sensitive business matters." I nodded and left him with the menu. But something about him nagged at me. There was something familiar about his profile, the way he held his head, but I couldn't place it. 20 minutes later, another man in a suit arrived, clearly the attorney. They spent the next 2 hours in intense conversation, speaking in low voices about contracts and acquisitions. I kept their coffee cups full and brought them lunch, but I tried to give them privacy. The attorney had given him some papers when I noticed their cups were empty. I approached their table. He had pulled out a gold pen and was signing the document from where I was standing. I could see his signature clearly, and my blood turned to ice. The coffee pot fell from my hand, shattering on the floor and attracting the attention of the entire diner. He looked at me, startled, and I immediately started apologizing and ran to the back to get a rag to clean up the mess. Pete came to me and tried to get some satisfaction, but I didn't have time for explanations. I needed to take another look at that signature, so I ran back to the businessman's booth and looked at the pile of papers as he signed a new page, the bold G followed by flowing letters, the exact same signature I'd been staring at in that hidden photograph for 17 years. "Sir," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "that's my dad's signature." He looked up at me again, confusion clear on his face. "I'm sorry, what did you say, your signature?" I said, my hands starting to shake. "It's identical to my father's, but that's impossible because he died before I was born." The color drained from his face. He stared at me for a long moment, really looking at me for the first time. I watched as his eyes took in my features, my dark hair, my green eyes, the shape of my face. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Kate Baker." "And your mother's name?" "Linda Baker." The heavy gold pen slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor, the sound echoing through the suddenly quiet diner. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "Linda Baker," he repeated, his voice hollow. "From Buffalo." "Yes, but how old are you?" "I turned 24 last week." "Oh my God," he whispered. "You're her daughter. You're my daughter." The world seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed the back of a nearby chair to steady myself. "That's impossible." "My father died in a car accident. My mother told me." "Your mother told you your father was dead." His voice was filled with pain and disbelief. "Kate, my name is Garrett Caney. I was 17 when I fell in love with your mother. We were going to get married after graduation, but her parents, they didn't approve of me. I felt like I was going to be sick." "Garrett Kane, the one who owns Caney Industries." He nodded slowly. "Your mother, she just disappeared. One day she was there, and the next day, her family told me she'd moved away and didn't want to see me anymore. She moved to live here in Millbrook with her aunt. She was pregnant with me." "Pregnant," he repeated, the word hitting him like a physical blow. "Yes. And she never told me." I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and showed him the photograph I'd taken of the picture years ago. "Is this you?" He looked at the image on my screen, and tears began forming in his eyes. "That was taken at the lake the summer before she left. I gave her that picture the day before she moved away. I wrote on the back that I would love her forever. I found it when I was 7, I said, my own voice breaking. "I've been staring at your signature my whole life, wondering about the father I thought was dead." Garrett reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Kate, I swear to you, I had no idea you existed. If I had known your mother was pregnant, if I had known she had my child, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you both. But why would she lie? Why would she tell me you were dead?" "Because she was 18 years old, pregnant, and scared," he said softly. "Because her parents had probably convinced her that I was no good for her, that I would ruin her life, because she thought she was protecting you from a father who might not want you." I thought about my mother, about the sadness I'd sometimes seen in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, about the way she'd never dated anyone seriously, never seemed interested in finding love again. "She never got over you," I realized. "She never married anyone else. She's been alone all these years." "And I never got over her," Garrett said. I built an empire. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I never found anyone who made me feel the way Linda did. I never stopped hoping that someday I'd see her again. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us trying to process the magnitude of what we'd discovered. "Are we sure you are my dad?" I asked finally. "Kate, you have my eyes. I'm sure you are my daughter. And if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know my daughter. And I'd like to see your mother again. To understand why she felt she had to carry the secret alone for 24 years. She's going to be terrified when she finds out, you know? She's going to think you hate her for keeping me from you." "I could never hate her," Garrett said firmly. "I'm hurt, yes, I'm devastated that I missed your entire childhood. But I understand why she did what she did. She was protecting you the only way she knew how." I looked at this man, my father, standing across from me in a small-town diner, and I felt a strange mixture of anger, joy, and overwhelming sadness for all the years we'd lost. I have so many questions. I have 24 years worth of questions. But we have time now. We have all the time in the world. That evening, I sat in our small apartment, waiting for my mother to come home from work. I'd called in sick for my evening shift, claiming a family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie. When Mom walked through the door at 6:30 p.m., tired from her day at the dry cleaner, I was sitting at our kitchen table with the old photograph in front of me. "Kate, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Mom, we need to talk about my father." The color drained from her face, and she sank into the chair across from me. "Honey, you know your father died before you were born. Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because I met him today. Mom, I met Garrett Kane." She went completely still, her eyes fixed on the photograph between us. "That's impossible," she whispered. "He came into the diner today. When he signed a document, I recognized his signature from this picture. Mom, he's alive. He's been alive this whole time, and he never knew about me." Tears began streaming down her face. "Oh God, Kate, oh God, what have I done? Why did you lie to me? Why did you tell me he was dead?" "Because I was 18 and terrified and ashamed," she said, her voice breaking. "Because my parents convinced me that he would ruin my life. That he was just a poor boy with no future who would drag me down. Because when I found out I was pregnant, I was already living here with my aunt, and I was too scared and too proud to call him. But Mom, you could have told me the truth when I got older. You could have tried to find him." "How could I?" she asked desperately. "How could I call him after 24 years and say, 'Oh, by the way, you have a daughter I never told you about'? How could I explain that I let him think I didn't love him, when the truth was that I never stopped loving him for a single day?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "Mom, he never stopped loving you either. He never married anyone else. He's been alone all these years, just like you." "He must hate me," she whispered. "He doesn't hate you. He's hurt. But he understands why you did what you did. He wants to see you. Mom, he wants to talk." "I can't," she said, shaking her head. "I can't face him, not after what I've done." "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "Because you owe it to him, and you owe it to me, and you owe it to yourself. You've been carrying this secret for 24 years, and it's time to let it go." The next day, I arranged for my parents to meet at the diner during the quiet afternoon hours. I watched from behind the counter as my mother walked in, looking terrified and beautiful in a simple blue dress. Garrett was already there, sitting in the same booth where we'd met the day before. When he saw her, he stood up slowly, his face a mixture of love and pain, and 24 years of longing. "Linda," he said softly. "Garrett," she replied, her voice barely audible. They stood there for a moment, two people who had loved each other as teenagers and had spent their entire adult lives apart because of fear and misunderstanding. "You look exactly the same," he said. "No, I don't," she said with a sad smile. I'm old now, and tired, and I've made so many mistakes. We both have, he said. But we have a daughter, Linda. We have a beautiful, amazing daughter. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry I kept her from you. I'm so sorry I let you think I didn't love you. I know why you did it, he said gently. I understand. You were protecting her, and you were protecting yourself. But Linda, we can't change the past. We can only decide what we do with the future. I watched from across the diner as my parents talked for hours, sharing 24 years of stories, of pain, of the lives they'd built separately while never forgetting each other. I saw my mother's face transform as she realized that the boy she'd loved was still there underneath the successful businessman he'd become. And I saw my father's eyes light up as he heard stories about my childhood, about the daughter he'd never known existed. When they finally stood up to leave, they weren't the same broken people who had walked in. They were two people who had found their way back to each other after a lifetime apart. Kate, my father said, as they approached the counter, my mother and I have been talking. We have a lot to figure out, a lot of lost time to make up for. But first, I want to do something for you. You don't need to do anything for me. Just being here, just knowing you're alive, that's enough. No, it's not enough, he said firmly. I missed your first steps, your first words, your first day of school, your graduation. I missed everything. I can't get those years back, but I can make sure you have every opportunity in the world from now on. What do you mean? I mean, you're not going to community college anymore, he said with a smile. You're going to whatever university you want, studying whatever you want, and you're never going to have to worry about money again. You're my daughter, Kate. You're a Caney now if you want to be. I don't want your money because you feel guilty, I said. I'm not offering it because I feel guilty. He said, I'm offering it because you're my daughter. It is already yours. And because I want to give you all the opportunities I never had the chance to give you before. 6 months later, I was enrolled at Columbia University, studying business with a minor in nonprofit management. My parents had been taking things slowly, rediscovering each other after 24 years apart. But anyone could see they were still deeply in love. My father had kept his word about not just throwing money at the situation. He'd spent time getting to know me, learning about my dreams and goals, supporting my education, not just financially, but emotionally. He came to my college orientation, helped me move into my dorm, and called me every week just to talk. My mother had quit her job at the dry cleaner and was now working as the director of the Caney Foundation, a charitable organization my father had started to help young people from disadvantaged backgrounds get access to education and opportunities. You know, my father said one evening, as we sat in his penthouse apartment, looking out over the city, I used to think success was about building something bigger than yourself, about leaving a legacy in business. And now, I asked, now I know that the only legacy that really matters is the one you leave in the people you love, he said. I built an empire, but the most important thing I ever created was you, even if I didn't know it at the time. Do you ever wonder how different things had been if Mom had told you about me from the beginning? Every day, he admitted. But then I think about the woman you've become. The strength and independence your mother gave you by raising you on her own. If things had been different, you wouldn't be you. You really think that? I know that, he said firmly. Your mother raised you to be strong, to work hard, to value people over possessions. Those aren't lessons you learn when everything is handed to you. You earned your character. Kate, that's something money can't buy. I thought about that conversation often in the months that followed. My life had changed dramatically. I was attending an Ivy League university, living in a beautiful dorm, and had access to opportunities I'd never dreamed of. My parents got remarried on a quiet Saturday morning in the same church where they'd planned to marry 25 years earlier. It was a small ceremony, just me, my mother's aunt, who had taken her in all those years ago, and a few close friends, but it was perfect. Do you take this woman to be your wife? The pastor asked my father. To have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live. I do, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. I always have. When they kissed, I saw 24 years of separation, of longing, of regret finally come to an end. They weren't teenagers anymore, but the love between them was as strong as it had been when they were 17. At the reception afterward, my father pulled me aside. Kate, I have something for you, he said, handing me a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant that took my breath away. It was a miniature version of the photograph I'd treasured for so many years, the picture of my parents by the lake, but now engraved in gold. I had it made from the original photo. I wanted you to have something that represents not just where we came from, but where we're going. That picture brought us back together, Kate, in a way. You've been the bridge between your mother and me your entire life, even when we didn't know it. I hugged him tightly. This man who had gone from stranger to father in the span of a few months. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. Some years later, I was back at Murphy's Diner, but this time as a customer. I'd graduated from Columbia with honors and was starting my own nonprofit organization focused on helping single mothers get access to education and job training. My father was my biggest investor, but more importantly, he was my biggest supporter. Pete, my old manager, came over to my table with a huge grin. Well, look who's back. How's the fancy college girl doing? Good, Pete, really good. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Oh, yeah, what's that? I'm starting a foundation, and I want Murphy's to be one of our partner locations. We're going to offer job training and educational support to people in the community who need it. Interested? Pete's eyes lit up. You mean like helping people get their GEDs and learn new skills? Exactly, and providing childcare during classes and helping people with job placement afterward. I want to give people the same kind of opportunities I had, but without them having to wait 24 years for a miracle. Count me in, Pete said without hesitation. This place has always been about more than just serving food. It's about serving the community. As I sat in that familiar red vinyl booth, looking around at the diner where my life had changed forever, I thought about the power of small moments, a signature on a check, a photograph hidden in a book, a mother's secret carried for 24 years. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Proud of you, kiddo. Can't wait to see what you build next. I smiled and typed back. Thanks, Dad. I learned from the best. But the truth was, I'd learned from both of them. From my father, I learned about vision and determination, about building something meaningful from nothing. From my mother, I'd learned about sacrifice and strength, about protecting the people you love, even when it costs you everything. And from both of them, I'd learned that love doesn't have an expiration date, that sometimes the most important connections in our lives are the ones that seem lost forever, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves again. The signature that had seemed like such a small thing, just a name written in flowing script on a document, had unlocked a lifetime of love that had been hidden away. It had brought together two people who had never stopped loving each other, and it had given me the father I'd always dreamed of having. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been working that day, if Garrett had gone to a different restaurant, if I hadn't noticed his signature. But then I remember what my father told me about destiny and timing. Everything happens when it's supposed to happen. Kate, he'd said, your mother and I weren't ready to be together when we were teenagers. We needed to grow up, to become the people we were meant to be. And you needed to become the strong, independent woman you are before you could handle having a father like me in your life. He was right. The timing had been perfect. Even though it had taken 24 years, we'd all needed to become who we were meant to be before we could become a family. Now, as I work to help other families find their way back to each other, as I watch my parents rediscover their love story, as I build my own life with the foundation of everything they taught me, I'm grateful for every twist and turn that brought us to this moment. The signature that changed everything wasn't just my father's name on a piece of paper. It was a symbol of all the love that had been waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal itself. It was proof that some connections are so strong they can survive decades of separation and still bring people back together when the time is right. And it was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen in the most ordinary places, like a small-town diner where a waitress recognizes her father's signature and changes 3 lives forever. An absolutely beautiful story about the power of love that transcends time and the secrets we keep to protect the people we care about. What do you think of Linda's decision to hide Kate's existence from Garrett? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this incredible story of family, forgiveness, and second chances, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more inspiring stories that prove love always finds a way. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.